Just as we did with our previous candidates, I'm going to ask you in 90 seconds to please state your name, the office you're seeking, and then answer the following question. What do you think are the most important solutions at the state level to address sea level rise and flooding? You can start with you.
Sea level rise and flooding. Hi, I'm Dawn Douglas. I'm running for State House seat 67. The most important things, I think clearly this disaster is man-made. I think everything that has happened is because of our misuse and abuse of our environment. I think we need to give up some things. I had a friend say the other day, well, can you imagine not having plastic bottles? I confess, I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have them. And it worked just fine. Nickel, if you remember.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that we need to take responsibility for what we have done to our oceans, to our springs, to our rivers. I'm a teacher. I'm fighting for education, but if our children don't have air to breathe, water to drink, and are not in fear of being, flooded out of their homes, education is not going to be very important. That's a real second seat if you can't eat, breathe and drink water. I know that we have to take, excuse me, we have to take care, we have to take responsibility to get rid of the fossil fuels. We have to get rid of them. I would not take money from them. I don't care how much they offered me. I will stay home and not take this job if it meant the difference. When I go up there, I will represent the people and the environment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Ryan, and I'm running for District 67 along with Dawn. We're in a primary. And I think the best solution that I can think of is dealing with transportation. We need to change society and get off the car. And to do that, we have to have mass transit. And I think the state government level is the area to start it, to bring in federal funds, to bring in state funds, county funds, city funds. And I propose that the first thing to do would be to build a monorail from Clearwater International Airport out to Clearwater Beach, or from Tampa International Airport to Clearwater Beach, right along the Courtney Campbell Causeway. And we could also tie it in with a junction from the St. Pete Airport. Hundreds of thousands of people fly in every year here to this county, and then they rent cars or they get taxis or Ubers, and they're contributing pollution to the environment. We could do better than that, and we could start and move Florida into the future where, well, that's what I was promised growing up. We're going to have monorails and not need cars, and that's a start. I'm about ready for the bell. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vito Sheeley, and I'm running for State House District 70. I'm running for this seat particularly because I believe the time has come for a change in vision, and a change in the way we shape policy in Tallahassee. One of the things that I believe that can be done right now on our state level is for our governor and our state legislation to recognize that global warming is real. When we have a governor who does not want to accept that, that is a huge problem. When we have legislatures that will not even mention the name of global warming, that is a huge problem. But I do believe that this is something that we've been talking about for over 50 years now. What can we do about global warming and the change of our environment? So there are a lot of things that I know that are on the books right now. I know the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council is doing a great job. That includes 7 counties. They're working to find improvements in what can be done in our state level, because honestly, on the state level, we haven't done very much. And that's one of the reasons why I want to go to Tallahassee and fight for issues such as this. I have a lot to learn, but again, like some of the candidates have said already today, I believe that surrounding myself around intelligent people, people who know and are knowledgeable of these concerns, will be able to help me and make our state greater. Thank you.
Thank you to our candidates. As I asked our previous candidate, I'm going to ask you, you talked about bigger picture solutions and trying to prevent, but when it comes to mitigating, what can we do to protect the areas and the homes that are currently at risk because of sea level rise? We'll start with Ms. Douglas.
Oh, that's impossible.
To mitigate, to prevent damage. I don't know how we're going to stop it immediately. I don't think it's going to be a slow stop. We think about building dikes or seawalls along our beaches. I live in the middle of Largo. If this continues, I'm going to be in beachfront property here in the next few years. That's what we need to avoid. We need to get rid of fossil fuels quickly. We need to take responsibility for anything that causes the atmosphere to heat up. I don't know how we can stop the rising tide at this point. Miami's underwater already, the beaches. We can't build seawalls big enough and fast enough. If any place is to build a wall, this would be it. I'm joking about that.
Well, hi, I'm Tom Ryan again, and I have joked about sea level rise and talked that we are building a seawall. It's a 30-story seawall along the beaches. As development and big money development, building more and more high-rises, and that is, what's going to happen with that is we're going to have a hurricane. There's going to be tremendous damage, and the rich people are going to say, hey, I need to be covered. And the federal government and the state, well, you know, okay, we got to jump in there. Well, we need to have sensible planning, and you don't build in a floodplain. I surveyed in this county for a number of years, and it's flat. And it's really, really flat. We measure things at 1/10 of a foot, and that would be a difference. Well, I'm running out of time, but I surveyed on Snell Island a couple times, and every time we went out there and surveyed, it was to appease the homeowners, but there wasn't anything they could do. They just put in more storm drains, and, you know, hey, it was better the next few rainstorms. And in a few years, there'd be another big push to fix Snell Isle again, because they insisted on it. Okay.
Thank you for the question. Again, my name is Vito Sheeley. Could you read back that question?
Yeah, so you all talked about solutions when it comes, bigger picture solutions, but for the homes that are already at risk in our area, what can we do to protect those homes because of, against sea level rise?
Well, again, like some have said, that, you know, we really, it's a huge concern right now due to the fact that we're already to this place. I think one of the things that we can do is to stop making the problems worse. We understand that we're having warmer summers, warmer winters, wetter storms, and, you know, the water is hot right now, and that causes, you know, storms, you know, with the weather being that way and the water being warm. And this is how we get in some of the algae problems and some of these problems that's going on. But I think one of the things that we can do right now is, again, we have to think about what we're doing. We have to start thinking about what is working and what's not working. And one of the things that I believe is not working, we have to stop building these power plants in our communities. We need to find other options of, you know, because the carbon is getting out in the atmosphere and it is causing these problems that we're discussing. So we need to think smarter, and we need to think about other ways that we can impact our community without causing the problems that we're already causing. Again, we've been talking about this since the mid-50s. So by now we should have some type of answer on what we need to do to protect our shorelines. And again, like some have already said here tonight, transportation is a big issue with that.
All right, so we're going to change it up. We're going to start with Mr. Sheeley on this one. An audience member addressed this with our previous candidates. So can each of the candidates answer, where do you stand on this? In what ways is sea level rise related to human impact on the environment?
I believe it is. Again, like I just stated, it is based on humans. Again, when we're making when we're building solar plants out in our state, that is a huge impact on our carbon in our state. So we need to rethink that. I think we need to really focus on solar energy in our state. We are the Sunshine State. We are the Sunshine City. So I believe that we should be leading the way in solar energy in our state. So I believe that would be very helpful moving forward.
Hi, I'm Tom Ryan again. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah.
What is this?
In what ways is sea level rise related to human impact and human activity on the environment?
How it impacts on the human environment? Well, I work at a dairy, and we make ice cream mix. That's all we do. And I can tell you from the impacts that are happening now in the southern part of the state, sales are down. The beaches are clear. Nobody's out there because it stinks full of dead fish. And then there's the rising tides. I bought a house, but I made sure it was in a no flood zone. And that was my number one criteria. And other people, I see them constantly, oh, this is a great place, and it's a flood zone. You're gonna get evacuated. And there's a reason for that, because it's gonna flood. And if we have the right storm, I'm telling you, this place is gonna be the worst disaster in the country, in the history of the country, because it is flat. Just can't stress that enough. A good wave will go block after block after block. Homes that you just can't believe are in danger. And you see it on your water bill, with your flood evacuation zone. And if you're in a flood zone, you need to be prepared for it. You really do.
I got lost. What is that question again?
Yeah, about human impact when it comes to sea level rise.
I think I stated this when I first spoke. I believe that humans have totally caused this. Our impact has been our overuse of cars and fossil fuels, throwing factory fumes into the air and blocking the sun, which causes we're disrupting the natural water cycles as well, the evaporation. And we have places where there's not enough rain. My son lives in California. I was there a couple weeks ago. They had like 40 fires going out at the same time, I believe. We could see 2 or 3 of them. I made a comment, it looks like Mordor. That's all gas and fumes going to air, causing more disruption. And the disruption itself is now self-creating more disruptions. If we don't get it in hand, quit using our fossil fuels, get rid of the things that are causing the damage to our oceans and our skies, we don't have any way to control it.
All right, and for this one, we'll start with Mr. Ryan. For what efforts are you willing to put taxpayer dollars to champion when it comes to sea level rise and flooding resilience?
Transportation, alternative transportation. I think that's the first and it's the best thing we can do right now. And a monorail system, in my mind, if we started here, it would lead, it would grow. Other places on the beach would say you got to bring it here. Other communities, downtown St. Pete, the downtown Tampa would say, well, we need to be able to bring the tourists here. And eventually, we'd have an alternative route to get out of the state. Last year's hurricane, 1.5 million people left the state. And the roads were so congested, there was only a finite number of gas stations that were receiving gas. And when people came back, it was a worse disaster trying to get back home from the hurricane. And we have people who missed 4 or 5 days of work because they couldn't get back. The roads were clogged. There was no gas. We need an alternative form of transportation to get out of this state when we need it.
And you can both answer the same question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. question?
Tax dollars. What
Okay,
efforts
so
are you
now-
willing to champion where you would
I would
allocate
love,
taxpayer
I'm
dollars?
sorry. Thank you. I would love to see our tax dollars go into restoring natural ways of building energy, such as solar, wind power. And again, we do live on the water. Why not utilize wind turbine power? We also need to do things to use more electrical power that was is created from energy. So if we're going to use the energy created by electricity, we're really still in the same firing line. We need to find a new way to use our instead of batteries, we need to have ways to, I forgot what I was trying to find. We need to absolutely have a way to power things without using electricity, because that burns coal and fuel typically, or nuclear power to create. So we need to find a new way to build our electrical energy. I think it's going to be primarily through solar, especially in Florida.
I agree with that also. I believe that solar is the way to the future, one of the ways of protecting our future and our atmosphere. Again, we are the Sunshine State and we are the Sunshine City, and I believe that we should be leading the way in solar energy here in our country, not only in our country, but in the world. That also brings in jobs, that brings in more opportunities for people to have a good income. We need to really focus on that. And just to step away from a little bit with the taxing individuals, but I do believe that we should put a price on carbon. People who are out there, taking advantage of this and, are just making it worse for everyone else in our community and in our state, they need to pay the price for that. And I think that's a way that we can start seeing some action taken and people start really recognizing the harm that they're doing to our environment. But again, I believe one of the first steps that we can take, along with the many that we've already taken here locally, is to really focus on solar energy here in our state.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to candidate-specific questions, and I'm going to start with Mrs. Douglas. If you could answer the following. The state legislature has implemented or attempted to implement a number of preemptions on environmental issues on topics such as regulating plastic bags, fertilizer, and styrofoam. What is your opinion on home rule versus state control on environmental issues, especially in regards to sea level rise?
Okay, in regards to plastics and things like, okay. I do know that we have plastics that are biodegradable. There are now, like the can rings that we were talking about earlier in the evening, that are actually edible. The marine life can actually eat them and will not be trapped or injured by them. We have to,
You want me to repeat?
please.
Yeah, so the question is specifically about the state legislature attempting to or implementing preemptions, meaning the local cities and municipalities cannot take action when it comes to regulating plastic bags, fertilizer, and styrofoam. So what is your opinion when it comes to home rule versus state control on these issues?
I'm very pro home rule on most issues. I do believe that we should have some state regulations, but I do not believe the state should be able to stop local communities from implementing rules that they want to have. For instance, the plastic straws, the one-use bottles. If Pinellas County or Clearwater, the city of Clearwater, city of St. Petersburg wanted to say, we don't want plastic, certain things here by the year 2020, they should be able to stop that without Tallahassee making a law that preempts and tells them what they can and cannot do. They should not be able to take home rule away if we want to make our area cleaner, any more than the federal government should be allowed to tell us that we can't make laws that protect our environment.
Thank you. And the next question is going to be for Mr. Ryan. In 2009, shortly before the Deepwater Horizon disaster, the Florida legislature moved to open our nearshore waters to offshore oil and gas exploration. Where do you stand on nearshore drilling?
We need to get off of fossil fuels. No more drilling, no more gas wells, no more fracking, no more, the energy sources are there, they're abundant. Solar, wind, wave action, we could move into other sources of energy. And it's not going to be something that, well, we have to move into them. We just can't. There is so much carbon buried in the earth, it will choke everybody if it's all released, and that seems to be the plan. And in my mind, Noam Chomsky calls the Republican Party the most dangerous organization in the history of mankind. That for a short-term profit, they're willing to risk the entire human race. And it's, when you listen to them speak, it makes sense, and they are willing to do that. So the solution is to completely get off all carbon fuels. That's my position. I know it sounds a little grandiose, and it's it's not going to happen probably in my lifetime, but that's my view, and that's what I would uphold if I got elected.
Thank you. And for Mr. Sheeley, low-income residents are frequently disproportionately affected by hurricanes. What efforts would you champion to deal with this?
Again, that falls back on transportation. We need to make sure when we see storms approaching that we find ways to make sure that our elderly and the poor are able to get out safely, and that's gonna all come down to transportation. We need to have a better transportation system in our state. We need to have a better transportation system here locally, and we need to have these type of programs set up in cases like this, when we know that we're having approaching storms. Again, folks, we live in the state of Florida. These storms are getting worse every year. Our state is getting warmer every year. Our waters are getting warmer every year. So we need to prepare for these type of events, and we need to be in front of it and not be behind the ball on the situation, and be able to move forward to assure that we can take care of the people that needed the most in times like this and disasters like this. So transportation will be my answer to that.
All right, one more for Mrs. Douglas. Do you think cities and counties in Florida should have access to state funds for flood mitigation projects? Why or why not?
Should cities have access to that? Yes, I do. People around the state, it's like having insurance. You build a block of money to help protect everyone, and then you use it as needed. And it's not exactly, our taxes are not insurance, but in a way they are, to ensure that other people have what they need. People on the coastline are obviously going to be more gravely affected more rapidly. Although if it keeps rising, there's also going to be intrusion into our fresh water. So I think we need to look at this thing as a whole problem, not as individual community problem. Because once the fresh water has saltwater intrusion, again, we're going back to drinking water and water that we used to survive with. It's not like we can make more fresh water if we don't save and protect our systems. And I think it should be a state issue and not an individual community. And we should protect our communities with state money.
And for Mr. Ryan, what policies can be put in place to avoid long power outages like we experienced in Hurricane Irma?
I don't know that we can put any policies in place to tell a storm not to wreck the power grid. I think what the power companies have done with their with the way they mobilize the emergency response teams, I think they do a hell of a job. In this past storm we had last year, there was a hell of a lot of damage, a lot of power lines down, and almost everybody was restored within a week. And I saw, what was it, Bel Air, 2.5 miles of Bel Air, the whole power system was down. Big trees had knocked them down, and in less than a week, it's all restored. So I think they do a pretty good job of that, and I don't know that I would be willing right now to stick my nose in it and try and tell them to do different.
And one more question for Mr. Sheeley. What role should the state education system play in education on sea level rise? Is there an education program you would champion?
Again, here in our state, our governor doesn't even allow us to discuss, global warming or sea level rise. So, as I almost said, as your next governor, but excuse me, as your next state representative, I would look to shape policy. The hope we would have a new governor who will remove that type of insanity, and we should be discussing this in our schools more with our students, because again, this once again is a way of life. This is what we're seeing. We're getting stronger hurricanes. Our oceans are warmer. We have glaciers and everything like that melting throughout the world. That's harmful not only to our sea level but to our lives itself. But yeah, we would need to elect a governor with common sense who was able to say that global warming does exist, and maybe then we could implement those type of policies into our classroom. But real quickly, I would like to piggyback off of his question. I think one of the things that we could do on an energy level is start having our power lines buried underground, and that way we could we won't lose as much electricity, and we will be able to still survive at that point if a storm were to come in, because we saw what happened out without electricity for a week. So I think that would be an option as well.
Thank you. And here is our first audience question, and this is for all candidates. Do you think that polluters like ExxonMobil and coal companies should have responsibility for the cause of climate change? Would you support a lawsuit? We can start with them.
Well, I would. I think it's going to happen. There are countries that are filing suit against Exxon and Mobil and Shell for what they're doing to the environment, to the earth, and I'm all for it. I think they've just got so much money, and they don't pay for what's in the ground. They just extract it.
I don't know if we're going to have any grounds by which we can actually take them to court. Were they doing something wrong at the time? Were they breaking laws at the time they were doing it?
Yes.
Were they? I hear yes over here. If they're breaking laws, yes, they need to be held accountable. I think the best idea is to quit buying their oil and put them out of business. And at the same time, if they have done some destruction purposefully, yes, we know we need to go regain that money to help repair and restore the damage they've created. I pray to God we don't see any fracking in Florida. We're just a little limestone island floating in the middle of the ocean, and we will blow apart. I have a friend who retired quite young from a profitable job as an oil rig engineer. He designed oil rigs in the ocean, and he told me, he said, when they implode, when those empty oil caverns break, we'll see countries swallowed in them. So that's another thought too. We need to really pay attention to what they're doing. They're breaking law, we need to go after them. We need to also, more importantly, just put them out of business.
My answer to that is yes. They should be held accountable, and if they have broken the law, we should sue. We should sue and get the money back and start restoring, our sea level and our just repairing the damage that's been done. So I would say yes to that.
We have one more audience question. Unless anyone else has any more, please raise your hand and we'll bring over an index card. So for all candidates, what are you going to do about the fertilizers and pesticides draining into our rivers and bays and oceans, creating bacteria and killing our marine life?
Again, we need to sue them. I can honestly say from the question that was held with the Congress candidate that one thing that we can do is not take money from these industries. By taking money from it, we're saying that we're okay with what they're doing to our environment. So I will not stand for it. I will not take money from them, and I will also fight every single day if they are breaking the law and they are causing harm to our environment, that they should be held accountable. And again, I think that, like I stated earlier, that there should be a cost to people who take advantage of our government.
I did a little research before I chose to run for office and looking at the congressional record. And one of the things that I saw, and I kind of wondered, and then I saw somebody introduced a bill last year to require that communities that sold excess land that was bought by the state had to give that money back to the state. And it didn't pass, didn't go anywhere. But I always wondered about the money that we collect, federal.
Dear to my heart. I've been watching the green goo that's coming out of Okeechobee. It reminds me of watching Nickelodeon. Remember the green goo they drop on people for fun? This is not fun. This is real. It's killing marine life. It's exacerbating the red algae. The goo coming out of there is like inches thick. It's untenable. We should even contemplate allowing anything like that to occur. We need to take the poisonous ingredients out of fertilizers if we allow fertilizers. I was a mermaid at Weeki Wachee in the 70s, and I remember swimming that gorgeous spring. It was so beautiful and bright. But then while I was there, all these strange things started growing at the bottom. We called it scrunch. I went back in the late 90s for the 50th anniversary, and I produced a show for our anniversary. And the scrunch had gotten so deep in places it was several feet deep. The spring looked like it was more shallow by several feet when you're in it, swimming. The state bought it and took all this scrunch out. So I know firsthand that it's overproduction that's coming up, is being put on the ground, is funneling down into the aquifers, then coming up in our underground rivers and our springs. So we're drinking this water that's been, has had tons of chemicals put into it. So it needs to stop now.
We have a few more minutes, so I'm going to ask one last question to all candidates. As sea levels rise and coastal Floridians are displaced from their homes, there's a potential for large numbers of climate refugees to migrate to different areas of this state. How do you propose the state prepare for this potential shift in population?
I think there's going to be an extraordinary number of people that have to move. We have not been good at moving people during emergencies temporarily, and this is going to be on a permanent basis. They're not going to be able to come back, at least not for many, many, many years. Perhaps we could have mobile homes like these tiny houses or one houses. They can one-room houses that they can pop up from FEMA, container type things that can be brought out that pop open that have livable quarters in them for people or small for a family. But we need to have something or encourage people to move before the sea level rise has actually occurred. Give them incentives to move farther north or farther to the center part of the state. It's going to be very difficult. Be hundreds of, what they say in the movie, like 150,000 homes just here are going to be impacted. We need to have a plan in place through FEMA and our individual communities as well at the state level.
I think that most of the people who are going to be impacted at first are very well off, and they're going to want to rebuild their McMansions on the water and their views, and it's going to be very hard and difficult, but we need to resist that. We're going to have to get people off the floodplains, and there's going to be a lot of resistance. And for the lesser well-off people, we need to be helping them now. There's a lot of homeless, especially in this area of St. Pete, and they need assistance, and we need to develop programs and fund programs to get people into housing and affordable, adequate housing. And we're not doing that, and I think that should be a very large part of the state government, there are a lot of people out there working on these problems, and they ask for help, they ask for money so they can do more, and we should be there in Tallahassee to give them help.
I believe that that problem right there really falls heavily on the federal government along with FEMA. And right now we're seeing bad things with the federal government when it comes to FEMA with not having the money there. So now the state has had to go into their CDBG money and help with the recovery, well, with help with rebuilding the homes from the last hurricane we had. But I believe that's more of a federal issue. But I do know that there are programs here, again, locally, that will help with situations like that, with helping people get into housing. If people, homes were destroyed, we need to find ways of making sure that they are able to have affordable access to housing if that were to occur. It's going to take both the state and the, it's going to take all. It's going to take the federal, the state, and the local government. Because again, folks, this is something that we've been talking about for over 50 years. This is something that is not changing. We're seeing the storms increase. We're seeing the damage that comes from these storms. So again, we need to be better prepared, and I think that comes from all municipalities and all forms of government.
Thank you very much to all our candidates. I would like to call up the school board candidates.